We go.
All right, Eric, I'm thrilled. We have a great guest today who is a LinkedIn thought leader. Can we say that? I think we can. Well, he's actually much more. I had a conversation with JD Gershbein a few months ago, maybe weeks, and I was just fascinated with what I learned from this person. Number one, he's a Chicago Cubs fan. So for all of those who are diehard Cub fans, I think you'll like JD. But he's also a writer. Get this, and I pulled this off of LinkedIn: speaker, educator, psychologist, humorist. I know he does situational comedy, social scientist, broadcaster, media producer, and marketer. He is a person that really cares about others. He is fascinated with leadership. I think you have a lot to add for us today on the leadership side as well as sales. So welcome to the show, Mr. JD Gershbein.
Hey guys, that's a lot of descriptions. I hope to cover them all during the course of this podcast.
Yes, we have
Which one of those kind of resonates the most with you?
Right now, humorist, because we are taping 8 months into a global pandemic, and man, oh man, oh man, do we need laughter.
Yes,
for sure.
Yeah. So one of the things that I came to know you, well, the way you were introduced to me was through this video that was circulating. I think it might have went viral, but you had like this conference room setting and a voiceover in Morgan Freeman's voice going
Yes,
on through this conference room setting as
yes.
what people were thinking about. Oh no, he was narrating. The narrator was like sounded like Morgan Freeman. I thought that video was hilarious. So the question is, why did you put it out, and how did you even get the idea for something like that?
Well, that just cracks the window to my world open wide right there. And folks can see this on my LinkedIn profile or on my website. It's a piece called The Training Session, and it was designed to promote everybody that participated in it. And it was really an exercise in content marketing. And more than anything else, I knocked around the idea of using comedy to promote myself and kind of making me seem more believable and standing out. I mean, if I'm a personal brand strategist, I better walk my talk. And there's a backstory behind it. I pooled the talents of some very talented actors, improvisers here in the Chicago area, and we made a video, and it works. You'll have to go see it, dear viewers. The
Yes.
Training Session.
Yeah, JD Gershbein, the
We don't
training
want to.
session.
We don't want to give them a spoiler alert, but there's
No,
a
but it's
really nice
hilarious.
payoff. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I love that video. It was awesome, JD.
Thanks.
So talk to us, personal branding. A lot of the people that you're dealing with are companies, right? I mean, you're going into organizations, talking to them about LinkedIn strategy, branding strategy, why that's important. Some of the things that we find when we're dealing with sales professionals who work for companies and aren't necessarily entrepreneurs is that they have a tough time figuring out how they can go about creating their personal brand while they work for someone else. And so they just don't do it because they believe that's lack of loyalty. They believe that's turning on their company. What do you say to those people?
Well, I think it depends on where that person is within the hierarchy of the organization, because companies want to develop leaders internally,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to engage their employees at the same time. And I don't think they would squash the efforts of any employee that wanted to dance above the fray a little bit and put him or herself out there as a thought leader or an industry expert. It can only serve the company. And again, as the company is mobilizing ambassadors and asking certain people to elevate and step up, it's not going to be picked up by everybody within. And those people are usually the ones that respond to the challenges, that will create content, that will rise to the occasion and advance their careers. And that's how organizations get better. So when I'm in at the company level, we're talking about obviously bolstering the individual profiles, but also bolstering the company, the organizational profile, and merging the two so they gain more exposure throughout the ecosystem. And thought leadership development is a huge piece of what I do today for both individuals and companies.
Wow, that's great. So can we take it back to, JD 15, 20 years ago? Today, you know, you have Owlish Communications. How did all that start? Like, talk to us about how you became JD, the brand strategist.
Oh, you mean how I went from point A to sitting right here with you guys?
That's right.
All right.
Yes. In
If you
So it all
5 minutes.
started at point
began.
A.
Um, well, interestingly, 15, 20 years ago, I still had Owlish Communications. I've been around the Owlish name since my junior high school, what everybody calls middle school today. And I'm writing about this as we speak. I do have a book that incorporates a lot of my story, more in a kind of a memoir guidebook type of fashion. But I've always been around the owl, the character of the owl. I've studied the owl, its attributes, its qualities. And when it came time to name my company, I turned to the owl, and it has served me well. But when the social media revolution hit, which we can put back around 2000, early 2000s, maybe 2002, 2003, I was truthfully meandering around in business. I was freelancing as a marketer. The internet was nowhere near as developed as it is today. And I was kind of in a quandary as to how I was going to move forward. Kind of resurfaced with my marketing company after spending some time in the sales arena. So I did bring that sales background, but I'm cut from the cloth of a marketer. I've always been around the messaging solution. And I moved a few years leading Owlish Communications into the mainstream, and then the start of the Great Recession back in around 2006, which was right around the time I saw LinkedIn. And when I met LinkedIn, it was love at first sight. I was completely smitten, and I wanted in.
What drew you to it like that?
I just saw how cool this thing could be, and
Yeah.
I deep studied it, and it was right around the holidays of 2006. The recession is starting. It's the holidays. Nobody's answering their phones, and this was a good time for me to really kind of get into this thing very hard. And within a few weeks, I created a consultancy solely devoted
Wow.
to LinkedIn at a time when nobody was outsourcing me for the services I provide today, but I was just kind of feeling it through and learning, and the platform, very crude by today's standards. It doesn't look anything like it does today, but still I saw something in this thing, and I put myself out there in a way, by example, where if others would visit my page, this point in the digital universe on me, they would learn things that maybe they wouldn't glean from my website, which I had, or my marketing collateral, which I circulated. And I just kind of, truthfully, guys, made LinkedIn my own. I planted the flag.
Wow, that's great.
What was the, I mean, so you were attracted to it heavily, but you were one of 3 people on it at the time. So what did you do with it?
Well, it was a kind of a early to mid stage early adoption. It was fairly well established. There were 20
Okay.
million on the site at the time, or thereabouts.
Okay.
And but nobody had developed a livelihood around it. I mean, nobody was ringing my phone. Nobody was pricing me or my services. So we were all kind of meeting in coffee houses, learning this together, figuring out what the next phase would be and also kind of laying back and seeing what LinkedIn as a company, as the provider of this platform would do, because they were the ones that gave it to us, and without instructions. So me and several others like me, and we all knew who each other were, all around the world.
Really?
We just kind of started to work this thing as a platform to kind of show folks what we were doing, let them know what we thought of were the possibilities at that time. Because let's remember, let's go back in the time machine. When LinkedIn was incepted, it was right up there with Career Builder as a job seeker site, and many people still think of LinkedIn as a place for people in job search exclusively.
Sure.
They never saw the business development side. So it took a while for salespeople and sales teams and sales leaders to kind of glom on to the business development potential of the site. And that's where I really wrote it out. And that's where I wanted to be at the forefront, is showing folks what they could do with this thing to develop new business.
Interesting. So over the years, JD, we were talking about this a little earlier, is about the whole authenticity thing, and it really has come to the forefront with LinkedIn over the past couple of years, I think. Was it like that back then, or did you see a transition over the past 15 years of LinkedIn profiles and people, putting out this authentic, appearance, for lack of a better
It's
word?
it's been relentless, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, and now while we tape this here in approaching the winter of 2020, uh, this thing has been around 14 years since I've been involved with it. And I'm not sure what went on before I came onto the LinkedIn scene. I'm sure it was even cruder than it was. But through 14 years, I've seen several revamps of the user interface, um, several edits and audits of features and functionality, but the best practices have remained best practices. And we humans tend to overthink everything. So in the early days, we were really using a lot of cognitive juice on this thing. Like, what is this, and how can we leverage this for our gain, for benefit, and for the benefit of those we serve? But now it has truly become a more humanized platform. There's a lot of give and take on the platform. There's a lot of noise out there on the platform because everybody has come to the realization at once that this thing could be good for them if they have an initiative or are looking to drive a niche. So much clutter, so much visual stimuli competing for our attention. How do we get ourselves out there in a way that's meaningful, that resonates with others, that truly conveys our value, and most importantly, for a lot of folks, converts to business? And that's where I've really seen the big change, is that it is used as an instrument of selling products and services. It's an instrument of what we call personal branding. It's an instrument for developing thought leadership. It's an instrument for displaying a style of leadership and asserting yourself with force on the system to guide others, to share insights, to share opinions, and most importantly, to keep us connected within the communities. And the networking piece, which has really come to the fore since the pandemic has struck. We're now truthfully being shown the importance of the relationships that we've already developed and the ones we're going to develop.
Wow. So if you were getting back into sales right
Great.
now, into a brand new industry, and you know everything you know about LinkedIn, right? You have this 14 years of experience on the platform. What would you do to be successful in your first 12 months?
Well, if it's a new opportunity, that means a LinkedIn profile update, fellas. I'm updating the profile. I'm refreshing. I'm recalibrating. I'm rebooting. I've reassessed myself. I'm rebranding. I've reinvented myself. Things like that. So obviously, the beauty of the LinkedIn profile is it is a living, breathing document that paces with us in real time, and we can change it as we change. So obviously, I'm bolstering the profile, and I'm engineering it to sell myself when I'm not present to sell myself. And then I'm truly auditing the relationships that I have, the network that I've built. I think this is the great and now frequently overlooked aspect of LinkedIn work is don't prospect to the point where you're led down blind alleys. Prospect internally, prospect within your network. Develop relationships that are already established, cement ones that are kind of looser than others, and move forward within your own organic circles. I favor an organic approach to LinkedIn because otherwise, I mean, you could generate targeted lists all live long day, but these are still names and photos on a device. You still have to start from scratch in building a relationship. So I think that's the first thing I do is I elevate my profile and I reach out to certain folks and I say, look, I'm in this new role. Here's what I do. Please review my LinkedIn profile, get an idea as to the types of products and services I provide, my core competencies, et cetera. And that's how we kind of move forward now in what I call a strategic alliance, a referral network. And building these referral networks now are huge pieces for me.
Are there do's and don'ts? And I'm sorry for interrupting. I just had this question like popped into my mind. Are there like do's and don'ts when you're updating your profile, things to stay away from that most people are doing wrong?
You know, interestingly, There are. I'm not one to harp on mistakes because I think there are too many of my colleagues, my so-called colleagues, who do that. I prefer to be the guiding light rather than the voice of doom. And we're now charged with being the stewards of our own stories. And I think a storytelling approach is what really sells people now. People don't want to hear canned, overt sales pitches, especially chock full of them on their LinkedIn profile. I mean, when you look at a lot of LinkedIn profiles out there, and a very high percentage of them are just sales pitches that reveal little, if anything, about the person. And one of the great realizations I came to early in my LinkedIn career was I felt people needed to know a little bit about who I was if they were going to consider being involved in a transaction with me for
What
the services
section?
I provide.
Like what
So
section are you talking about, JD?
everything, the whole profile operates as a gestalt marketing piece. It is now a prized asset, our most prized digital asset.
Huh.
And I've always looked at it as the exhibit that I was curating on me. And as the curator, I could include everything that my ideal prospect would need to know about me if they were going to do business with me. And there was some that I could leave out. And the tendency is for folks to just talk about how cool they are and not really get into the eyes, minds, and shoes of their clients. So I adopted what I call a client-centric approach and reverse engineered the profile through the eyes of my clients. What would they most need to see about me if they were working with me? What was the experience like working with me? Yes, I was cool. And if they wanted to learn more about my background, they could see all the neat stuff I did. And now with LinkedIn being such a visual medium, people are producing videos. A lot of folks have done TED Talks. They're best-selling authors, or at least they claim to be best-selling authors. They've certainly coerced enough people to write 5-star reviews for them on Amazon. So they've got this kind of cachet and they put themselves out there on this profile at face value. But one of the things that stayed constant about me is I've always stayed true to my story and my core values. And I value humility in others. I think we should be downplaying ourselves and be self-effacing. And that's what endears us to others. And I'm also an empath, and I approach what I do from the viewpoint of a healer. So by being in touch with my client's pain, I don't position myself as a guy who's too lofty. I position myself as a guy who's right there to provide the relief.
Wow. I recently had this conversation with a couple of salespeople, and they were excited because two of their clients were going to give them video testimonials about their service.
Mm-hmm.
I said, that's awesome. What are you going to do with that video testimonial? And they're like, we're putting it on LinkedIn. I'm like, what's your goal for that? And then we got into this conversation, like, what is the client, what's the person that you want to see that video testimonial? Why are they on LinkedIn? Do you think they're there to see video testimonials about how awesome your company is? Or what do they really want to get on LinkedIn? So
I think there's a place for the video testimonial, Eric. I think it's a very powerful piece of social proof. And what we're trying to do as sellers, as marketers, as owners, is stockpile social proof. We'll change a lot of the meat of our profiles, the context, the language. But the one thing we won't change are the good words said about us by others.
absolutely.
And nowhere is that more powerful than a authentic, polished video testimonial. They're extremely powerful. And of course, there's a place for them on LinkedIn, place for them on the website. They're in a direct message even. There are so many creative uses now of the testimonial. Back in September 24th, 2012, amazing how you know that date, JD, LinkedIn introduced endorsements. And at no time in the history of LinkedIn was any feature that they brought out more confusing than this endorsements feature, because they were basically superficial acknowledgments that I knew someone had a skill, I would just acknowledge it. It was kind of almost artificial in the way people went about accumulating these endorsements. It became a popularity contest, almost a tit for tat type of thing. You endorse me, I'll endorse you. And what it did at the time was it completely phased out the written recommendation. which I attached greater significance to, which I know a lot of LinkedIn users attached a lot of significance to,
Mm-hmm.
and still do, because a written recommendation becomes marketing collateral. It becomes great support for what you're trying to achieve, as does the video testimonial. So testimonial language in general, which is obviously third-party objective feedback from others who have gone through the experience of working with you, extremely valuable.
Where would you, so what's a good use of it? Not, let me rephrase that. What is a good way to go about using it to benefit yourself and benefit your clients?
Obviously, in the LinkedIn profile under the experience section, or
Okay.
if it's that good a testimonial from that powerful an individual, and obviously the persona of the testimonial is important. I mean, who is this person who's saying this about you? If it's the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, pretty valuable, right?
That's pretty valuable, yeah.
But if it's someone who worked on Cubicle Row, who just kind of maybe fetched coffee for you a few times, maybe not so valuable. So I think that we have to kind of truly evaluate who we want recommending us. And once we have the product, there's multiple uses. It lives on the profile, it lives on the website, probably doesn't live on YouTube at this stage of the game, but it's something that could be used to at some sequence during a sales conversation.
That's great. Yeah, I love it. I think that's exactly what I thought. I'm just not a fan of posting it like a regular post. If it's, like, hey, look
Correct.
how awesome we are. But
Correct.
I could see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Message to someone you're already down the road with, or there's even a section you can post videos. I don't remember what it's called. It's not experiences. It's right underneath the profile
The
picture.
about section. Well, you have 3 sections where you can post videos. You have the about section, you have the experience section, and any experience section can support video. And what a lot of users may not know is the education section, but I don't think I've seen anybody with a video under education. I had one for a while because I served as an adjunct professor at my institution, and I did have a piece for that under education as well. And then LinkedIn now gives you the ability to feature certain content that you put out there. So right underneath the about section itself, you have a kind of in carousel fashion, you can have people toggle through some visuals.
That's what I'm talking about, the
Posts.
featured
Yeah,
section. Yeah,
the
and that's
featured
powerful.
section.
That,
Yes.
I think that's a good place for testimonials. So you
And
also do,
yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
And that's a good place for it too, because it's high enough above the fold where you want to keep all of the great content compressed and condensed
Yeah.
up on that top ridge of content, because it falls within our retinal field, especially on desktops. People can see it maybe by just one single scroll.
That's right.
Studies have shown that if people are going to keep scrolling, they may zone out and bounce out. So we want to concentrate all of the best about us toward the top of the page.
Oh, that's great advice. That's where I have my picture with Harry to let people know that I know Harry Spate. And
Yes,
it's done wonders for my business.
of course
Well,
it has.
right there, that's going to tip the scales in your favor.
That's right. So you're also, I mean, you do a lot of work with improv comedy.
Yes, I
And
do.
and Harry also has done some improv comedy. Could we have like a battle of improv comedy going on here today?
Oh no, absolutely not. I submit to JD.
Well, the interesting thing about improvisational technique and what is known now as applied improvisation, which which I espouse and I use freely in all aspects of my communication, is that it really does keep you grounded in the moment. And it's very tough to stay grounded in the moment when you're in the virtual space right now. There's so many things coming at us. We're in what I call the new busy right now, and everybody's kind of winging it to a certain point, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm far less goal oriented than I used to be. Something that kind of comes with age, maturity, maybe, I don't know. But at the same time, I'm focused on other things. My values have shifted, but one thing that has truly stayed constant with me is my desire to have fun with people and keep it real and light and, as you would say, authentic. And improv has been instrumental in shaping that process. When I first was exposed to it as a student at Second City back in the late 1980s, at a time when it was really cool to say that you had some exposure to improv and performed improv comedy, I was very, very self-aware, very situationally aware, because you're very focused on your scene partner. And you're not trying to be funny or get a laugh. You're just trying to extend the scene, extend the dialogue. And think about this, 30 years later, 33 years later, isn't that where we're at as salespeople?
Mm-hmm.
All we're trying to do is extend a dialogue, keep it going, keep that plate spinning with the right amount of force. And the techniques that I learned at Second City in my study of improv and sketch, and even media production and solo performance. I mean, as a speaker, my whole goal is to involve people. I may not be their cup of tea. Who knows? I mean, I've got thick skin. I can take it. You know, nobody is everybody's cup of tea. I strive to be an acquired taste. So I'm more concerned about letting folks see the authenticity and the reality behind who I am, as opposed to being some contrived force of nature out there, or embellishing myself in a profile with qualities that I can't live up to.
So how, all right, I'm sorry.
No, so the
Okay.
improv piece becomes even more important, and I've been studying it immersively the last several years, because it's everything that we as humans do to communicate effectively.
Yeah, I mean, I think about it as that you're really feeding the other person, right? If
Mhm.
you feed each other the lines or the question or the thought, that it's their job to pick it up where you just set the table for them, so to speak,
Absolutely.
right? And so in sales, um, the challenge is that salespeople may not be deep thinkers, a lot of them. And so what they'll do is when it gets quiet for a second, I mean, Anthony Iannarino talks about asking a question and counting to four before, just giving the person an opportunity to give it.
I counted 10, but I'm actually doing it a lot slower, so it's like a 4 count.
Okay, so it's what is the value of that, right? It gives the person a chance to think about what you said and to come up with a response, right? It's not automatic. So what's your thought on that?
Well, there's silence that's awkward, and there's silence that's calculated, and there's silence that's strategic. And when you're trying to keep conversations in play, you'll use anything. And there's some great strategies for that. I'm always questioning people. I mean, that's right out of classical sales training, is keeping the prospect engaged with questions.
Mm-hmm.
There's 2 words that I think will draw something out of someone, and that is, what else?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Tell me
What
more.
else?
Right.
That's great, Harry. What else?
Yeah, and then I'm stuck, right? And then you're going to count to 10, and then there's going to be that awkward silence, and I'm going to have to
Well,
break it.
those 2 words are like truth serum for a lot of people, because then
Right.
it all starts rushing out, and it says, well,
Yeah.
you asked me what else, and I told you what else.
Yeah.
But really, the art of extending conversations and converting these conversations, because if anything, we are trying to build this conversational equity we're building into sales. We're trying to obviously guide the prospect to a close of some kind, but it's done naturally. It's
Mm-hmm.
not square peg into a round hole stuff. And what I find when I fall back on improv techniques and applying the basic tenets of improv, I keep those conversations moving.
That's
And
great.
I do it on email, I do it on voicemail, I stage touch points with folks. In sales, we talk about touch points. I mean, obviously that's a tally point for a lot of sales folks who like to keep score. How many touches to get to the
Mm-hmm.
sale? And
Right.
that is important, and everything's a touch. And on LinkedIn, what LinkedIn does is it really isolates the power of those touches. A LinkedIn profile view is perhaps the most strategic touch point of all at this point, a simple view of a profile, because if that other person is paying attention, it registers. and you've achieved top of mindedness. Maybe
Yeah,
temporary, but you've done so.
I was listening to you on another podcast, and you spoke about that as far as what a great touch point that is. I thought that was a very interesting take. So for
Yeah.
those who probably have not, maybe not have heard the podcast, but can you go take that a little bit deeper then?
Well, I don't know which podcast you're
Well,
referring
it
to,
was
Harry. There
one
have been
about
so
there's
many.
millions, I
Probably
think.
Joe Rogan's.
Everybody's got a podcast. Well, it's something that is really a natural talking point for me because it's the only metric I care about on LinkedIn. Everything I do, the so-called funnel dynamic of my LinkedIn activity is to get people to view my profile. Because unless they've clicked on it by accident, they were there.
Right.
And ideally, they extracted or excavated something from it. And maybe they're carrying it around with them. And if I'm on a Zoom call with them and they're dredging up points that I know they had to dig down deep to get, then okay, this person has learned a little something about me. Maybe they'll be motivated to investigate me further. Maybe they'll be receptive to the products and services I offer. Maybe this could become a sales dialogue or an opportunity to cultivate. And I don't sell folks on my products or services to the extent that I sell them on a collaboration with me, because if they're not my economic buyers, then maybe they're people who can get me to my economic buyers. So if it's someone that I'm on good terms with, or they viewed my profile, I viewed theirs, we know what each person knows what the other is capable of doing. It just leads to better talk, better communication.
What is it you do then? So I find you, check out your profile, and then
Yes.
I go off in cyberspace. What is your next step?
You're so enamored by me that you reach out and say, how much do you charge? No,
No.
you would actually connect with me. We
But
would be,
so I went to your site and did not connect, or I went to your
oh, you went to
profile,
my page and did not connect.
exactly. I
Okay.
just observed and then I went away. So
Well,
would you look? Yeah.
what's my
No.
knee-jerk reflex going to be? If I
Yeah.
see you on my profile, what's my knee-jerk reflex going to be? What would yours be?
Look at their profile.
Yeah.
Is the right answer. So,
Yes.
See, we're improvising here.
So follow
Yeah.
this with me. You've reviewed my profile. Believe it or not, you've made a touch point
Yes.
for me. That's one touch point. I've reviewed your profile. That's two touch points. Still, there's been nothing going on. Now let's say, Harry, for the sake of argument on this podcast, that I decided I wanted to connect with you. Well, I would send you an invitation to connect. Now, I wouldn't send you the generic formulaic standardized boilerplate invitation request. I would send you a personalized request that would frame the relationship. So if you ever forgot about me, you could go back into the archives and see who the hell I was. So that invitation that you receive is a third touch point. You have received the touch point. You have contemplated to accept that. You have accepted. You will send that acceptance back to me. That is a fourth touch point. We've had no dialogue.
Right.
I've received the fact that you've accepted my invitation, and I'm back to you with the thank you for accepting my invitation message. I'm communicating with you now. We're at 5 touch points.
Good job, Harry.
You've received that, and maybe you'll send me back, JD, I hope you and yours are staying well in these COVID-19 times.
Yeah.
That's another touch point. My 7th touch point is to get you on a one-on-one Zoom call. Harry, in reviewing your profile again, which is a 7th touch point, 8 touch points, I find that we may have professional synergies worth exploring. Would you be amenable to scheduling a one-on-one Zoom call with me? You respond by saying, why, absolutely, JD, your Zoom room or mine. That's 9. I send you the Zoom invitation. And you can see that you can get to 15, 20 touch points before you even have the Zoom call. Because then I'm sending you stuff in advance of our Zoom call. Maybe I'm sending you the video of my training session video, or the aforementioned video testimonial, if it's not too salesy.
Right.
But again, these are things that kind of allow us to parse out our value and create character.
And you can really stand out, because at this point, it's probably a good guess to say that you're not the only one that's having these touch points with this person. And so if you're like everybody else sending generic messages, or if they agree to a Zoom call, you send just a generic Zoom call, like this is an opportunity to go slightly above, beyond, stand out, like there. And one thing I like.
Well, I'm also I hate to cut you off. I'm being
Yep.
respectful here too, Eric, because I'm not under the impression that everybody wants to have a one-on-one Zoom call with me.
Right.
That's a chain of 2 or 3 touch points right there to get to the Zoom call, to get approval for the Zoom call. And I'm a permission-based dude. I'm respectful. I'm treating them the way that nobody else treats them, because everybody's trying to sell them at the point of invitation.
Sure.
My
That's it.
gosh, it's amazing what people are doing now. This ugly side of digital marketing, just churning out these spammy invitations to connect. So what I'm doing is I'm appealing to their emotions and intellect in a way that nobody is. Who's spending this much time to just try to get an appointment with anybody at this stage? It's all about bypassing the relationship and getting to the sale for a lot of people. So by giving you that opportunity to respond to the question, would you be amenable to scheduling a Zoom call with me? What are you bound to say on the other side? What would you be thinking? Well, I mean, nobody's showing me this kind of courtesy, or no one's putting the ball in my court. They're usually just thrusting their Zoom invitation right on me.
Right.
Or their Calendly link.
I'm Googling amenable.
You're Googling amenable?
Yes.
Well, I think that's a great
English
point.
is my second language.
The whole idea, like you get invitations daily, you accept, and then the next thing is the pitch. Do you have 20 minutes to whatever?
It's
right?
awful. It's just freaking awful. And I report them all to LinkedIn. I find that they're offensive, they're intrusive, they're not in alignment with what I feel is ethical on the site. It by definition, it's spam.
Yeah, clearly.
In its purest form. And LinkedIn has a zero tolerance spam policy, as do I.
Yeah.
I would
like
never
it.
do this. I would never do this to people. I mean, and it's just, with all we're hearing about relationships, guys and viewers and listeners, we still continue to do it, or we still continue to see it.
Yeah. So you're not a big fan of people who use software to reach out to 100, 200 contacts a day of CFOs or something, and then
No.
generate a second message once they accept a connection. You sure
No.
you don't want to give that some thought?
You answer that kind of fast, JD.
I think he wants to think through that one a little bit.
Can I get back to you on Monday?
Yes. Man.
I mean, again, how do we want to use this site? How do we want to be remembered? You want to talk back to your question about the mistakes people make. I have dozens of screen captures of what I call bad actors and examples of bad invitations that I use as teaching moments.
Okay.
It's unfathomable at this point. And I don't accept, 8 out of 10 invitations I get. And for me, it's pretty easy to tell who the people who are churning them out through the automated software programs, because I go by my initials, JD, both capitalized, and the automation piece doesn't capitalize the second D.
Oh, simple. Yeah, it's great.
So right off the bat, and these messages are starting to be repetitive, like they're coming from the same marketing firm. And it's like, I mean, automating LinkedIn does not work. It may produce numbers for people, but when you talk about good business that stays on the books, that could create lifetime economic value for people, it's just not going to be done on this kind of campaign. Campaigns are reaching out to people within your network and making sure that them and their families are okay, and talking about how they're faring in today's turbulent times. And from there, you'll find that the conversation just takes on its own stamina, its own inertia, and it gets into areas that you want it to get into. And you can accomplish a lot on a half-hour Zoom call with someone. You can really build a nice relationship, a trusting relationship, because we're allowing people into our homes.
Yeah,
we're living
I agree.
in the fishbowl.
Yeah. I mean, so I like Eric now. I mean, we had a Zoom call. I like you. We had a Zoom call. So yeah, it seems to work.
There's this kind of dynamic and energy that you just can't get in a coffee shop with a buzz of activity behind you, and everybody's distracted because they're looking at the line and seeing what people might be ordering with their bagel. So, and now,
There's less chewing on a Zoom call.
you've got real life, and you also have the fluid in case you get dehydrated. So, I mean, we're all kind of now urged to be authentic, and I think that the Zoom has really played into our authenticity now, and that as sellers, our prospects are seeing us in our true light, and as prospects, we're learning a lot more about the person that we may be buying a product or service from, and that's in the sales milieu. When it comes to connecting with people and building a referral alliance, or becoming a brand ambassador for someone, or even just getting people to like your posts, that too requires cognitive force and conversational skills. You have to really persuade and influence people to be on your side and share your work.
I find it very interesting to put out, some really deep thought I have, and I get one like or something.
Doesn't that suck?
Right? I said, well, that was the best of me.
Who are you, LinkedIn algorithm, and why?
Yep.
Why?
So can I just change the direction a little bit and go into leadership? Because I know that you are a person that has a fascination and a passion for leadership. Can we talk a little bit about where does that come from, and what you're doing today to help others to be better leaders?
Sure. I just subscribe to being a leader by example. I never fancied myself as a captain of industry. I answered a call back in 2006 that, okay, this plays to my strengths, this LinkedIn piece, whatever it is, whatever it might be on the other side. And again, I want to see what I could accomplish through this. And I became a student of leadership. And LinkedIn, and basically anything in business, is about serving people. And great leaders are great servants, period. They give people the autonomy so that they can flourish. And that's where I decided I wanted to go. At the start of my LinkedIn career, I felt that there was a little pressure to be the smartest person in the room, because people were coming in, legal pads open, ready to take notes, and I had to deliver knowledge. I had to basically understand my role as an educator, which I take very seriously, and that I had accrued some specialized knowledge that could help my audience make money or ideate on their own and make it work for them. And I still do that today. Believe me, I've just let more humility come out as a result, and more self-effacing humor. But truthfully, if anyone out there is going to embrace the notion of being a leader, they have to truly be in touch of what it is they're doing and why they're being accessed and what they can truly provide. And I work with people to really flesh out their value. And as I've worked with them to do it, I was able to accomplish this on my own. I feel that I've built a brand by helping folks kind of reconcile their own value as professionals. That is not easy work. It's great work, but it's hard, man. And it's hard to compress and squeeze your thoughts out onto a Word doc and translate that onto a profile of some kind. And I just thought, well, I'm going to take the initiative and I'm going to show people how it's done. And it started to come back to me. I never went out and self-declared as a leader or a thought leader or a domain expert. Never. You will never hear that from me out of the first person. But as people were giving me feedback and they were telling me this out of the third person, it started to resonate. Okay, I'm making an impact. I'm having an effect. I'm moving the needle for people. And I just think the best leaders right now are the ones who don't have to beat the dead horse and say that they're leaders.
Right.
I'm a leader, dang it.
Trust me, I'm a leader.
Yeah.
Follow me.
I've got leadership skills.
Right.
Yeah, that's funny.
You do know I am the boss.
Yeah.
It sounds pompous and arrogant.
It does.
And leadership is something that has to be proved, and not just once in a while.
Yeah.
Constantly.
I've read much of this large book that has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages. And one of the things that I was most fascinated by it is, you strive to become a servant leader, right? And I didn't know that there's steps to leadership. I mean, I always thought that I was just serving others. But then one of the things that this book brought out, and I'll give kudos to Brian Cunningham, is the leadership revolution. And he speaks about some people are not ready for servant leaders. They want authoritarian leaders.
Right.
And I just, when you look at some people that you're trying to lead down a path, and if you're not the carrot and stick basher, right? They just don't understand, right? They don't, I mean, have you experienced that at all? Or what's
I
your
think
thought on that?
I think that leadership is the hottest topic in business today, yesterday, and always. And we are really seeing during the midst of a global pandemic how important true leadership is. And people who are kind of rising to the challenge of leadership and are stepping out and stepping up. So I think that I put out a number of writings on how we quantify this, especially on LinkedIn, which is our vehicle now to put ourselves out there as leaders. It's easier to qualify than to quantify. The effectiveness of a leader is something that is a continuous outflow from the leader's soul. It's not something that can be measured in an instance or a moment. It's got to be something that's impressed upon people constantly. And if you're going to be that person, if you pick up the mantle of leadership, that is a responsibility to yourself and to others. And if you're good, you'll be anointed. Mm-hmm. If you fail, you'll be blasphemed. That's just the way it is. So I don't attract attention to it. I feel that I'm a solid leader by example, certainly in the LinkedIn space. I've had some leadership exposure growing up, but I never ever thought of myself as a leader. But I'm also a facilitative leader.
Yeah.
And that is, I like to be in groups of people and facilitate a discussion and
Sure.
move people to ideas and insights and opinions that maybe they otherwise would not have conjured had I not been present.
Absolutely.
And for me, that's a huge part of what I do. And again, I'm a natural empath. I have fun with people. My coaching style is somewhere between a hand holder and an ass kicker, because I feel that people have to be motivated to be led as well. I mean, I'm not sure if they want me leading them at this point, mm-hmm. But you know what? Based on the feedback I receive, certainly in my space, I continue to put out what I feel is right and what I feel will work for people based on my experience. It's all experiential learning.
Sure.
And great leaders draw from their experience. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to do that.
Yeah. And the fact that you said that not everyone is in your audience or something along those lines, right? Not everyone may be a fan of you doesn't seem to hold you back.
Well, again, yeah, nobody has universal appeal. Nobody. And I'm hoping that I'm the kind of person where enough people will want to plug into on a regular basis to get motivation, inspiration, ideas, insights, input, all that, and keep coming back. I haven't productized all that much. As we sit here today, I'm writing a book. I'm trying to get this book out. It's been, 15, 20 years in the making. I'm trying to cough it up like a cat trying to cough up a hairball right now. But I hope to have it out, and it will be out. But
excellent. I will give it 5 stars if you ask me to give it a review.
Thank you. I'm really after the 5-star reviews at this point.
I'll endorse you on LinkedIn for a book.
I'm doing it for the likes, fellas.
What's the book going to be about, JD?
I never started out to write the LinkedIn book because it just changes too rapidly. LinkedIn is a huge piece. LinkedIn gave me my identity in the business universe, and I've kind of accrued my own brand economy through it. And I understand personal branding and share my strategies for personal branding through this book. It's part memoir, part guidebook.
Wow. Strategies for personal branding. Is there
How
one
about that?
strategy that you can share with us right now?
Well, I could take the easy way out of this question and say, be yourself. Some people find that
That
difficult.
strategy never works. Please, can we get to a strategy that works?
JD, can I be
Nobody
someone
likes me.
else, please?
Yes.
Right. We
Who
don't
else can
like
I be?
ourselves.
Yeah.
JD, my story sucks. I need a new story.
Yeah.
You know,
Harry has a
there's
cool story. Maybe I could be Harry.
I like your
much,
story better.
much of what we call personal branding lies outside our control. And I believe the greatest piece of any personal brand right now is adaptability. And we have truly been shown this since March of 2020. I mean, we started the new decade with high hopes and then just got nailed by a virus. I mean, just completely uprooted, disrupted. We're trying to reclaim momentum. And how do we do that? We have to now show up in an altogether different situation. What may have worked prior to the pandemic is no longer working for a lot of people. People have moved on. They have reinvented themselves. Many who were furloughed, who lost their positions in corporate America are now becoming entrepreneurs and beginning businesses. So they're rebranding. That is strategic. How do I go about doing this? When does idle activity become something tactical or strategic? And that's where the notion of strategic personal branding comes in, because we all have the ability to shape and guide perceptions about us. And that's where LinkedIn probably has its greatest value to us, is in our ability to communicate our real-time situation, what we do, why we do it, how we do it, for whom we do it. And that's truly branding right there.
You just gave such a gold nugget. I mean, I'm like, and you kind of cruised by it. We all
Don't
have
forget to
the
tip your
ability.
waitress.
Harry handles the tips. We all have the ability to influence the way we're perceived. Is that
Totally.
I mean, yet
But
people
we don't have the ability to influence
our
what
brand.
people will eventually think of us.
Right.
From the outside, from the internal outward, we have that ability to look a certain way. Our apparel, our body language, our gesturing, our expressions, our mannerisms. These are things that we convey. We do have control over that. But what we don't have control over is the impression.
Mm-hmm.
We know what kind of impression we want to make. And in my world, I talk about the best possible impression, the BPI, which is a capstone of my book. That's the goal of any brand strategy, is to create your best possible impression with the people who most need to be impressed. And when you can accomplish that, you've kind of actualized yourself as a brand. You've become what we call a fully actualized brand, that people know who you are. They don't have to expend a lot of psychic energy to know who you are. And the products and services or niche or company or skill sets that you're aligned with. So we can shape that. We can shape it through our conversations, through our touch points. That's the one thing that I impress upon my sales teams when I train them. Yes, you know the questions. You're ready to deal with any objection that comes out of the prospect's mouth. But how are you branding with that prospect? The prospect looked away right now. What would he or she remember about you? What has made you memorable?
How are you branding with that prospect? Wow, I've never asked that question.
No, my head's spinning on that one.
You see, I knew there was a reason you invited me on this podcast.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking along the lines of the value of salespeople have skills. Like I manage a team of them, and what you just said was, we have answers for everything, right? But what we don't have sometimes is empathy.
Right.
And I can remember an example years ago. Some person asked me a question, and I spouted off an answer, and I nailed it, right? I nailed the answer. And I said, we have this deal. I looked over at the rep, and I said, we've got this. Well, later that day, the guy called and says, I'm going with someone else. The rep told me, and I'm like, what? That's impossible. My answer is so good. He said, yeah, he thought you were too cocky. So I didn't have empathy. I just, all I had to do was just, instead of say something along the lines, I've heard that before, and here's the answer. And,
Mhm.
and after that one example, I learned that you then start saying, that's a great question. That's an interesting, that's fascinating, right? You individualize that one person as that their problem is unique instead of saying everyone else has it and this is what you say, right? And
Right.
that's what I think a lot of salespeople do.
Right. I would agree. And there's a a huge emphasis on meeting preparedness and showing up well rehearsed and knowing your product specs and
Mm-hmm.
building rapport and trying to fish ideas out of thin air to be relatable and that kind of plays out of authenticity a little bit. I think and that's easily recognizable when we're not authentic. Um, and I think prospects want to be treated a certain way at this point. I think truthfully, we should call it social buying and not social selling, because the buyer holds all the cards right now. Hey man, there's
Right.
so many people on the planet who could sell me this product or provide this service.
Mm-hmm.
Why should I look to you?
Damn.
It's kind of like that "sell me this pen" scene from A Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
DiCaprio trying to ask the person to sell him the pen. It's the same thing. Why you? Why now? Those are the questions that the prospect is asking. They may not vocalize it, but the seller should come from that place of client pain and talk about what he or she would do differently. What makes them unique? Why are they so well positioned to handle the account? That kind of thing. But instead, we're just fishing for conversation starters. Hey, you went to University of Michigan, I saw. Do you know Steve?
I love that when someone says, well, actually, this is not my office.
That's right.
My
Well,
office
here,
didn't have, I'm borrowing Steve's office or Bill's office or something. And it's like, oh, okay.
may I share a little story?
Of
Yes,
course.
please.
Because
Please.
if anything, we're encouraged to be storytellers these days.
Yes.
So this was back in my sales career. I worked in the disability insurance industry for many years, and I sold the physician and dental market. So my clients were doctors and dentists who are notoriously back in those days bad business people, and we were not in the internet age, so everything was kind of old school. So I'm in the doctor's waiting room. I've got my briefcase. I've got the sales proposal in my briefcase, and I'm well prepared. I'm well rehearsed. I'm going to get the business, and I'm in the zone. So I get called in. The doctor will see you now. I walk in, and when I walk in, I see everything on the room is golf. There's golf paraphernalia everywhere. There's pictures of him in foursomes playing on the greatest courses of the world. There's golf accessories on his desk, golf sculptures on the credenza, a putting green in the corner. And I sit down, and the first thing out of my mouth is, "So, you're a golfer."
Pretty observant of you, mate.
I think I got the business. I'm not sure, but I was one of those I could have had a V8 moments, because it's like I could have said, "How you doing? How's the
Right.
day treating you? Having a good week?" But no. "So, you're a golfer."
Yes.
Funny
Well,
story.
you are a person that does situational comedy. Did he feed you a line to work with that?
You know, I was probably so mad at myself. I probably couldn't. I probably couldn't regain my composure. I whipped out some papers out of my briefcase. I think he signed.
Please don't respond to what I just said.
He
I said,
responded. It's
"Can I have
his
a do-over, doctor?"
yeah. He started with a no and ended with a Sherlock.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
But I mean, everybody's got those instances where the woulda, shoulda, coulda.
But you were
And
younger then and less experienced, and
look, if
there's
I knew
got to be
back
a
then
reason.
what I know now.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So JD, how do people reach out to you, and who can benefit from the experience of JD the most?
Well, I think they should start by sending me a generic connection request on LinkedIn that I'll ignore.
Perfect.
And then if that doesn't work, they no. It should surprise nobody that I'm on LinkedIn. I can always be reached out on LinkedIn. Please mention that you listened to this enjoyable and highly engaging podcast appearance.
Oh, excellent.
And I'm happy to
Flattery
connect
will
with
get you
them.
everywhere.
Hey, you guys, you brought it out of me. You extracted the story out of me. I know we're going to get this out, and hopefully folks will be enlightened and amused. It takes a lot to keep people attentive and interested in almost an hour of content, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I think so.
I had to
But
take a short nap, but other than that, I'm good. Sorry, I was only.
I did too, actually.
Oh my goodness.
It's one of
I
my
think we're gonna
long
have to redo this
questions.
one. Yeah. So, JD, thanks a lot for being here with us today. Really appreciate it. Name of that video again that people can go and check out, and we'll link it as well.
Oh, please do. It's called The Training Session. I made it with a very young, talented voiceover and improv comic, Ryan Goldshire, who's a local guy here in Chicago. He was 20 years old when I met him. That was a while ago now. And he's doing some great things out in Hollywood right now. He was a sophomore at USC, and he stayed out there, and he's an entertainer, and you're going to hear big things from him. Gifted celebrity impressionist, and he's really the glue that holds that piece together.
It's an amazing video.
I can't
love
wait
the
to see it.
creativity.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. And if you are the one person left listening to this episode, reach out to JD on LinkedIn saying, I heard you on Lead Sell Grow. Do you want to buy? And then fill it in with your product or service, and you are guaranteed to get a connection.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm in the business of meeting good human beings, and I'll leave off with this on a serious note.
Okay.
I think it's very easy to feel displaced right now, 8 months into a global pandemic. We don't know what's coming. We feel almost like warriors for the 8 months we have under our belt so far. And when you look at the study of human pandemics and how they've kind of played out, it's not going to be good for a while. And the key is we have to be there for our families. We have to be servant, facilitative leaders for our families first, ourselves first, and then to the people that we want to serve in business. And the business conversation is really delicate right now. Nobody wants to be thought of as someone else's lead. You want to approach people from a place of service and empathy and compassion, and let them know that, yeah, the conversation starter is really about how we're doing as humans, as opposed to, do you need data storage right now? and I think that's what's always kind of held constant for me is I've always respected the person at the other end of the table, on the other end of the phone, on the other end of the Zoom call. And as much as I like to have fun, it's serious business for them. They have their struggles. They have their issues. We're all trying to get through it together. Some of us show it a little bit more than others. Vulnerability is in vogue right now, thanks to Brené Brown. And so for me, it's just a question of that right mix of vulnerability with authenticity, with adaptability, with resilience, with compassion.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wise words.
Great stuff.
Thank you, JD. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
joining us
guys.
today.
You're
and
great.
Thank you guys for listening. Please be
Thank
sure
you, guys.
to give us a review and share this episode if it resonated with you. Have a great day, everybody.